In this episode, we're going right back to the very beginning, where this all started. D-Day. The D, of course, stands for diagnosis. Most type 1 diabetes diagnosis stories... Wait, no. Let's call them origin stories. Yeah, that sounds cooler. Origin stories. Most type 1 diabetic origin stories start with usually at least one of the following symptoms: significant weight loss, extreme thirst and dehydration, and serious exhaustion and sluggishness. Me, not so much. My symptoms were a little bit different, and a little bit more personal. We'll get to that. Come back in time with me to January 2011. I was a fresh-faced student at Newcastle University, just about to enter my second semester of Spanish and Business Studies. Life was generally pretty good. I was making a bunch of new friends, settling into a new city, and generally getting stuck into student life. That is, until one day, out of the blue, with no prior warning, rude, and with no prior symptoms, I developed thrush. Yeah, I told you it was pretty personal. For those of you who don't know, thrush is a fungal infection which is caused by excess sugar in the urine, which was of course being caused by excess sugar in my blood. So naturally I was pretty curious, so I marched down to the local clinic, dropped my trousers, and spent the next hour being swabbed and stabbed and tested for various venereal diseases. All of those tests came back negative. My blood test results, however, came back positive for diabetes. Come again? The doctor couldn't believe how high my blood sugars were and told me that he'd have to refer me to a specialist. I told him he must have been mistaken, pulled my trousers back up, and went back to my halls. Probably had a beer or something. That's what students tend to do. A few days later, I was on my way to a Spanish lecture when my phone rang. It was the local diabetes specialist clinic ordering me to drop whatever I was doing and to get there immediately. Now, for the first time and the last time in my life, I tried to use an academic appointment to try and get out of a doctor's appointment, and not the other way around. It didn't work. About an hour later, I was sitting in the doctor's office, surrounded by 2, sometimes 3 nurses, poking me, prodding me, telling me how this would be it, that I was type 1 diabetic, that this was a lifelong chronic condition with no known cure, that I would be injecting myself and testing my blood and pricking my fingers for the rest of my days, for as long as I should live. Did we mention there was no cure? Did we say about the needles? You know you have to inject yourself every day, right? It's worth mentioning at this point that I have a serious issue with needles. He threw information at me left, right, and center about my diet, about my blood, about my now defunct pancreas, about how this would be for the rest of my life, how this would be it from now on. The funny thing is, I actually remember about 30 seconds of the entire hour that I spent there. They say that trauma and memory loss are somewhat linked, and I genuinely wonder whether that's the reason I don't remember much. So that was that. That morning, on my way to lectures, my backpack contained my laptop, a pad of paper, a couple of pens, probably a flyer for a nightclub or something. That afternoon, my backpack contained enough insulin to put a horse in hypoglycemic shock. I was in a state of shock myself as I got back to my accommodation. 2 hours since that first phone call, and all of a sudden I was a walking pharmacy. I got back to my room, emptied my backpack into my drawer, arranged it all neatly, and then stood back to admire it. You know how like when you're a kid and you tidy your room, and then you stand back and you bring your parents in and you show them what a great job you've done? Yeah, it was kind of like that, but really sad. Anyway, D-Day. My diagnosis story. Wait, no. My origin story.